Please stand for the reading of the gospel. The gospel reading is John chapter 11, beginning with the first verse. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, let's go into Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, the Jews were but now seeking to stone you, and are you going there again? And he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awake him out of sleep. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary sat in the house. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, he who is coming into the world. When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying quietly, the teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he said, where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he's been dead 4 days. So they took him out, his hands and feet bound with bandages, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, unbind him and let him go. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Just hearing this, I mean, what a wonderful, riveting moment. Richard read that so beautifully, and if you imagine the moment, the pathos, we needn't just imagine it also as a once upon a time kind of thing. We've all been in some kind of situation like this. Once in a while, for instance, you read something, there's usually a book, I think now there's a movie where somebody is pronounced clinically dead, and then they come back to life, and they come and they say what heaven is like or whatever. What do we make of such things, such rare occurrences? Or sometimes we're holding watch over someone that we love, and the doctor has given a very dire prognosis indeed, but then somehow the person rallies, and it's a miracle, and they're back with us. We've been watching, for instance, Samaya, the 7-year-old girl in our congregation whose brother Rendez drowned trying to save her. And a week ago, it looked totally bleak for Samaya, but now she's rallied, she's opened her eyes, she's responding to commands. It's a wonderful thing. And when this happens, we rejoice, and rightly, and we give thanks to God. The premise in all of that, though, is that we say on those rare occasions, when it's a rare occasion, is it? Most of the time, when the doctor says it looks really bleak, it is really bleak. And what we're inclined to say then when we lose the one we love is what Mary and Martha said when Jesus arrived. They said, Lord, if only you had been here. Lord, if only you had done something. Lord, if only you had been here. And Jesus doesn't mind them saying this. He doesn't mind us saying such things. Everything we need to know about Jesus is contained in that moment that Richard read to you from John 11, is that Jesus arrives at the grave there in Bethany. He sees their sorrow. He sees the death of his friend Lazarus. He's moved, and in the shortest verse in the Bible, we learn everything we need to know about God. Jesus wept. Jesus, he loves us that much that when we suffer, he weeps. It's so moving. We meet Jesus in the depths. We meet Jesus by the graveside. We meet Jesus in our darkest moments. That's part of the genius of the emotionally healthy spirituality. So don't cover up the darkness that's inside all of our heads and souls. We go there. We find Jesus there. He loves us in those dark places. And yet Jesus would not just be loved in the dark places or just in the hour of death. Last week, there are a lot of interesting things in last Sunday's newspapers. At one was an interview that my wife found and shared with me. It was an interview with Barbara Ehrenreich. You know her, she's taught us a lot about poverty and justice, and she wrote Nickel and Dimed and so on. And she's an atheist, but she talks about this in the interview. I love this. Here's Barbara Ehrenreich, this atheist. She says, I've spent so many years talking about poverty and economic justice that I'm strongly tempted to get biblical on you. Listen to this. Jesus' teachings are so wonderful, so radical. They're just insanely generous. Like, I love that. Like, atheists are saying nicer things about Jesus than we do who are in the church. That's how wonderful Jesus is. And then she says this. I think Christians become more fascinated by the dead Jesus. They don't like the living Jesus. And the question we have to ask is, do we like the living Jesus? Do we know the living Jesus? The living Jesus, as it turns out, has some pretty radical things to say. Jesus had some insanely generous behaviors that he hoped that we would mimic. The living Jesus did not come to people and say, see you next Sunday, or I'll be there in the hour of your death. No, Jesus says, put down your nets, put down your old life, and follow me. And it's hard. And it's not just life as we know it continuing on. The living Jesus. How shall I say it? Jesus grieved Lazarus' death, but he was more interested in Lazarus' life. And when he raised Lazarus from the dead, his purpose surely was not that Lazarus would just have a pulse and be able to breathe a bit longer. No, what Jesus wanted for Lazarus is what Jesus seemed to want for everybody else in the Gospel of John, and that would be contained in the word life. In the Gospel of John, life doesn't mean just having a pulse and breathing. In the Gospel of John, life means living in very close proximity to Jesus. In John, life means thinking the thoughts of Jesus. In John, life means being as generous as Jesus. In John 10:10, Jesus says, I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. And the abundant life is not just, oh, everything is jolly and we're having a grand time together, isn't it? Isn't it a wonderful life? No, the abundant life is being filled with Jesus. It's living close to Jesus. It's being like Jesus. Another interesting item in last Sunday's New York Times, Ross Douthat is, I heard someone call him once, the token conservative op-ed writer for the New York Times. That hasn't been funny all day, has it? Ross Douthat. He had an op-ed in last Sunday's paper where he talked about the benefits of religion. This is very interesting. There should be benefits to being religious, right? Like your marriage should be better. You should be a better employee. You should be a little bit happier. You should be a little bit healthier. But what studies have shown recently is that there are absolutely no benefits to religion. As it turns out, religious people don't do any better than anybody else. For instance, there's a really interesting study that shows that divorce rates among conservative Christians are higher than the general population. Like, come on, right? You would think conservative Christians would have a lower divorce rate than the rest of the population. What Ross Douthat pointed out is there are better studies coming out now that emphasize what matters, which is this. What the studies don't indicate is, like, how serious are you about your Christianity? And as it turns out, for people who participate in religion, like it really matters to them and they really act on it day to day, that they really do pray, they really do read their Bibles, they really are generous for God, they do all these things that we prescribe for you. As it turns out, those people's marriages go better. As it turns out, those people are more contented. As it turns out, there are many benefits of religion for the people who are active participants in the religion. But if you have a mere affiliation, if you have just checked off a box, there's a poll, Christian, check. United Methodist, check. Myers Park United Methodist member, check. If that's all it is, there is absolutely no benefit to religion. But if you get involved in this thing, if you really follow Jesus, if you do the stuff that he prescribed, if we try to live like him, there are tremendous benefits to religion. There are all kinds of studies that demonstrate this in various ways. My favorite one is a study that somebody did of the people. This is really interesting. In World War II, there were people in Europe who harbored Jews and protected them from the Nazis at great risk to themselves. And the question that was asked later is, who were these people? What did they have in common? And as it turns out, it wasn't a matter of wealth. It wasn't a matter of did they know the Jews before they harbored them. Most of them did not know them at all before they hid them in their homes. Was it a matter of political inclination? No. Was it a matter of nationality? No. What those who harbored Jews had in common almost 100% is that all of them were devout Christians. Not token Christians. A lot of the token Christians were actually working in the concentration camps, but those who were harboring Jews at risk to themselves were profound Christians, deeply rooted Christians. I love it, what we're about to do today, the Lord's Supper. Jesus said, the night before he died, Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. And it's the only thing that Jesus told us to do in remembrance of him. He said, it's just not enjoying church today. It's hard. Do this in remembrance of me. And if you think about it, Jesus could have told us to do any number of other things in remembrance of him. Like Jesus could have said, get a tattoo on your forehead that says Jesus in remembrance of me. And if we'd had that, there'd be some people walking around with Jesus on their forehead. I, for one, am grateful Jesus didn't say, get a tattoo on your forehead. Jesus could have said, learn this special jig dance in memory of me. And you're grateful Jesus didn't do that for somebody like me. Jesus didn't say, wear your hair a certain way in remembrance of me. Jesus didn't say, wear a green jacket in remembrance of me. Jesus didn't tell us to do anything like that that's external in remembrance. He told us, what he told us to do to remember him is to put something inside ourselves. We eat. It's food, it's drink, it's what you need to live, it's what nourishes you, it's what changes who you are. I like that. Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me. Feed on me. Make my body and blood the very thing that sustains and nourishes you. It's something you put inside yourself. It's something that changes you from the inside out. And Jesus didn't say, do this one time in memory of me. Oh yeah, Jesus could have said that, like on your 12th birthday, do this once, and then you've done it. No, Jesus said, what? As often as you eat it, as often as you drink it. It's not like something we're supposed to do like a lot, like eating, like drinking. I love that. It's Jesus' way of saying, let this be real. Let this be something that happens on Tuesday morning and Thursday afternoon and Saturday midday, not just Sunday morning, not just in the hour of death, not just when you're in a pinch, not just when you're in a huge crisis. Maybe if you feed on the Lord, you actually avoid some of the crises. Jesus really is as wonderful as Barbara Ehrenreich, an atheist, understood. And the question is, do we take that seriously? The question is that our very nourishment? The question is, do we put anything down to follow him? When Lazarus was raised, I love this, in those days they would have bound the body with strips of fabric. You can imagine Lazarus coming out of that tomb. Jesus says, unbind him and let him go. And partly he's just saying unbind him and let him go, but I think it's a word for us. What is it that binds us? There's so much custom, there's so many habits, there are the expectations of others, there's our own drivenness, all of these things that bind us and constrict us. Jesus mercifully says, unbind those people and let them go. Be unbound, be free to serve our risen Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am grateful that Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me.